boys will be boys. No, I'm just kidding. That's horrible. That's not true. That's psychos will be psychos is a better way of saying that. Hello, beautiful people. It's me again. It's your girl, Sippy. You're watching Makeup and History. Okay, we are not doing long intros anymore. I'm just gonna jump right into the story. Today's story is going to be a crime story from the 1920s that took the nation by storm, you guys. This story was on the front page of the New York Times 5 times back then. Like, people were shook by this because what it did was made people question whether or not people are inherently good or evil, or is it sick versus healthy? I don't know. And if that's the case, there's a lot of sick people now. Like, this story is heinous, don't get me wrong, but the world is much worse now, I will say. No, seriously, you guys stay safe out there. People are getting crazy. Like, what is going on? Is it the water? Okay, so to start this story, we need to get in our time machine and go back to the 1920s, okay? Put your seatbelt on. We're here. We're in 1924. Okay, so May 22nd, 1924, the body of a 14-year-old boy is found after he had gone missing, and he'd been missing for 2 weeks at this point. He belonged to a wealthy family, so the police were on the search for him. They thought he was just, maybe run away or kidnapped, because the family also received a ransom note. The people who had supposedly kidnapped the boy sent the parents a ransom note, but before the parents could answer the ransom note, his body was found, and he had been bludgeoned, and they also poured acid on his face to hide his features, which is honestly so rude. Like, don't pour acid. Why would you do that? Of course, this was very shocking and upsetting to the community, but even more shocking and upsetting was when they discovered who the killers were, which also happened to be young boys from the same neighborhood. When they found the body, they also found it with a pair of glasses. Like, there was a pair of glasses left next to the body, and they were able to figure out that the glasses were like a special hinge that only 3 people in the city had. I'm assuming that they just found whoever made them, because back then everyone did everything by hand. It was so organic. So they go to the manufacturer, the shop where these glasses were made, and they narrow it down to 3 people. Only 3 people in the city had these glasses. 2 people were ruled out, and the one person left was a kid named Nathan Leopold. Nathan was 19 at the time. He was a law student, and he came from a wealthy and prominent family in Chicago. Right, I forgot to say that. This takes place in Chicago. The detectives didn't think it could be him because, he came from a really well-to-do family, and he seemed like a good, good little studious little boy. I don't know. But they have to take him in for questioning because he's a suspect. Like, they found his glasses. Which, by the way, why? That seems like a really crazy thing to leave behind. To me, I don't know. They ask him about his glasses, and he says that he was bird watching and he just might have dropped them. And his alibi for that night was that he was driving around with his friend Richard. Like, he and Richard were together with some girls, and they were, driving around the city. And so the police are like, okay, well, now we need to question Richard also. Like, before they bring Richard in for questioning, though, they search around Nathan's room, and they find letters between him and Richard, which kind of indicate that they might have been, more than friends. So it immediately made his alibi sketchy because he told the police that he was riding around with Richard and girls. And they're like, were you out with girls? Were you, or was it just you and him? Also, there was girls there? Really? I think it was just you and Richard, but no judgments. Actually, back then they probably did judge. They probably hella judged. They were like, oh, and you're nope, lock him up. So they go and arrest Richard as well, and they start questioning him. And they also take the ransom note, and they're able to cross-match, like, writing from the boys and the ransom note to kind of make it seem like it's similar, like they wrote it. At first they both denied it, of course, and then eventually they get them to crack, and they start turning on each other and blaming each other. And they say that yes, they admitted to the murder, and they claim that they had planned it for months in advance. The victim, the 14-year-old boy, his name was Bobby Franks, was actually Richard's cousin, so he trusted them, which is really messed up. It's really messed up. They said their plan included them renting a car, and then they invited Bobby to come with them, just to have a joyride. And he's thinking, cool, my older cousin wants to hang out with me. Like, this is so fun. As soon as he gets in the car, they hit him, and then they suffocate him. And then they drive for a bit, and they go get lunch. This is what they're telling the police. Like, they go get some lunch, and then they drive for a little while to find somewhere to dump his body, and then they pour the acid on his face, and then they leave. Then they drive on back home, just a regular old day. The detectives were shocked hearing the story, but even more shocking was that both of them seemed proud of what they had done. Like, they both talked about it separately in 2 different rooms. They both talked about it, like, with excitement still. So rude. So when the district attorney hears about, you know, what the police have discovered, he immediately decides to go for the death penalty, like right off the back. I think it was because maybe they came from a wealthy family. Like they seemed like really privileged, like well-to-do, spoiled boys who just made a heinous decision. And when word gets out about the story, it sends everyone into a frenzy. Like, it was just shocking, because why would they do that? Why would they do that? Boys will be boys. No, I'm just kidding. That's horrible. That's not true. That's psychos will be psychos is a better way of saying that. Psychos will be psychos. When questioned about why they did it, they both said basically just for the thrill of it. The detectives did think that Nathan seemed like the darker of the two. Like, he seemed like he was more of like the dark mastermind behind all of it, and Richard maybe just went along with it. Because Nathan described killing Bobby as like the same as killing a bug. I'm not going to reiterate that. He made it seem like it wasn't that big a deal. Killing a person, it's not that big a deal. No big deal. Just like, you know, when you squash a bug. Spoken like a true psycho. Oh, my eyeliner broke. So the police start doing more investigation into the boys and like their relationship and, you know, what their life was like, to maybe try and discover why they would do this, because it seemed so random and unnecessary. It just didn't make any sense. Like, they could not wrap their brains around why would they do this. Maybe if they had come from like troubled backgrounds or like troubled families, it would have been, you know, still unacceptable. But these boys came from really, really well-to-do families. They were both in college. They were both very studious and smart. Like, why would they ruin their lives like this? Why would they ruin Bobby's life? Why would they end Bobby's life? They didn't ruin it. They deleted it. So rude. Okay, so after the police do more research into both of the boys, they discover that they've been friends for 4 years, but that they were kind of opposite. Richard was described as being really handsome and charming and popular, and Nathan was the exact opposite. Like, people described Nathan as like a bit reserved, kind of weird. Many people couldn't really understand why they were friends, but it turns out it's because they were more than friends. They had a little bit more than a friendship going on, if you know what I mean. Well, you know what I mean. I told you the police found love letters. They were in love, which is fine. Well, actually, it probably really wasn't fine then. People who knew them said that both of the boys had a superiority complex, though. Like, that's something they had in common. They were both very, very intelligent, and they like presented themselves as being better than other people. So even though Nathan seemed like the darker of the two, the police discovered that Richard was the one who had an interest in crime, and he introduced Nathan to crime. Like, he would read true crime stories to him and, you know, talk to him about his favorite crime stories, and he eventually convinces Nathan to start committing crimes with him. So the two of them go out, you know, committing little petty crimes and having sex, which then I think was also a crime. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong on that. Most of the crimes they were committing were, again, really small, petty, like vandalism, stealing stuff, I guess, I don't know. They weren't doing anything serious, but they would egg each other on, and eventually they, you know, convinced each other that they should do murder. Like, they should commit the ultimate crime, murder. And this to them would be like the ultimate superiority test if they could commit a murder and actually get away with it. Like, that would prove that they were actually better than everyone, I guess. Psychos will be psychos. I do think that there are studies that show that, like, when boys get together and they're like influencing each other negatively, it turns into catastrophes. Like, a group of boys together, I don't think there's anything more dangerous than like a group of adolescent boys. Like, why are they like that? I don't know what it is. I think it's testosterone. It probably is testosterone. So they both told the police that they didn't think that they would ever get caught, but they did. So I guess they weren't as superior as they thought they were. Now that the story was a media frenzy and they were facing the death penalty, the parents of both of them hired a criminal defense attorney named Clarence Darrow, who was famously known for getting high-profile criminals and politicians off. Like, he would win their cases even though they were obviously guilty. And the family knew that because both of the boys had confessed that they weren't they had to go to jail, but they wanted to get rid of the death penalty. They were hoping for anything other than the death penalty, and they were willing to pay anything. I just struggled so much putting on my lashes. You'd think I'd never done that before in my life. Like, why was that so hard? So this attorney, Clarence Darrow, happened to be staunchly against the death penalty because in his eyes, his belief was that people committed crimes out of circumstances. So usually, you know, for money, because they were sick or they were abused, or, you know, it was always a reason why they did what they did. And so they shouldn't die for it, was what he believed, until this case. He accepts the case, and when he goes to meet the boys and, you know, finds out the details of it, he's absolutely horrified because it goes against everything he believed about why people do things. He's like, maybe they should. Imagine the parents hire him to not get them the death penalty, and this is the first time he actually thinks maybe they should get it. But he genuinely could not understand why they would do this. Like, no one could understand it. It was baffling. Here were two young men who wanted for nothing, very intelligent, but did something so horrific. So he wanted to understand why. Why would they do this? We all did. We all want to know why. So Clarence hires a team of psychiatrists, or alienists is what they called them back then, which is, I wonder when they switched to psychiatrists, because alienist is way cooler. Like, you're an alien, let me figure out what's wrong with you. You're not human. Anyways, alienists are brought in, as well as other specialists, to determine what is wrong with these boys. Like, why would they do this? So they conduct all these tests on them. They do all these, like, Sigmund Freud type exams. They look at the family history. They look at, you know, their, like, social life and everything. Media critics also begin speculating that, you know, it's the roaring 20s. Like, the times have changed. The kids are going crazy. They're listening to all this crazy music and, you know, doing all these crazy things. They just thought it was like the kids going nuts. After all of the examinations and tests are done, Clarence determines that the boys are both mentally sick because they've been emotionally stunted due to the way that they grew up. Even though they grew up, you know, wealthy and with money, they both had nannies and, I guess, absent parents. So you killed the little boy? I don't know. His claim was that because they were emotionally stunted, they were emotionally neglected as children, that they still lived or believed in a fantasy. So that's the reason that they came up with this crazy idea to murder a little boy, was because they never grew up emotionally. Okay, do you know how many people are emotionally immature still, and they wouldn't do that? In his defense, Clarence claimed that both of the boys had been emotionally and sexually abused by, like, caretakers when they were younger, nannies, I'm assuming. He called them governesses, which I don't really know what that means, but I'm assuming it's like a woman who was taking care of them when they were younger. I don't know. He says that they also came from very cold families and they had a lot of pressure to succeed, and so this made them lack empathy for other people because they felt that they didn't have any, I guess. And, you know, I don't know. I've been around a lot of people who were wealthy or grew up wealthy, and I can imagine that might create, you know, I'm not gonna make any excuses for this. I don't know, but I do feel like the fact that they had money doesn't necessarily make them mentally healthy. In fact, it might lean more towards the other way. I also think that young boys, like when boys are abused by women, that is often overlooked and not taken as seriously as the other way around. And also boys don't talk about it. Like, they don't really, you know, tell people about it. So that definitely could play a role in, like, traumatizing the brain, the mind, emotionally, you know? I can see that. I don't know. The good news about this story is that when the word got out about the defense that Clarence Dowa was making, it did make other families start looking more into, like, their children's lives and asking questions, because a lot of people, wealthy or not, felt that this was, like, kind of a red flag. Like, what is my teenager getting up to? Like, is my teenager just gonna go randomly kill somebody and then I gotta worry about that? Which is good. That's a good thing. Ask questions. Ask your teenagers questions. Spy on them. Don't break their trust. But definitely get up, like, see what they're doing. Like, what are you up to? Again, this was a very popular story during the time. Like, a lot of people were really, really tuned in and invested in this. Like, they wanted to know what was going to happen. But the ultimate decision would be left up to the judge. Would the boys, you know, receive the death penalty and be hanged, or just receive a life sentence? Stay tuned. Stay tuned to find out. On August 18th, 1924, both sides give their closing arguments, and Clarence Dowa specifically gave, like, a really moving closing argument. Like, it had everyone in the court case in tears, even the judge. He basically went on about how, you know, we're constantly killing people. We're always at war. Like, is this really the answer? Like, he was more so trying to get rid of capital punishment altogether. But he made the argument, like, you know, is killing these boys really gonna help? Like, is that gonna help anything? It does kind of set an example, though. But I don't know. You know, maybe you know, if they did receive the death penalty, it would convince other boys not to get the stupid harebrained idea. But I don't know. So after hearing the closing cases, the judge took 12 days to deliberate and make his decision, because he really, you know, he was moved to tears by the defense's arguments, and so he really wanted to think hard about this, because he felt like he would be judged or judged. Imagine that, a judge being judged. He felt that he would be criticized no matter what decision he made, so he really wanted to really think about it. And then on September 10th, 1924, he came to his decision, and he decided to give both of the boys life in prison rather than the death penalty. And he didn't make this decision based on having mercy for the boys, but because they would have been the youngest people to ever face capital punishment, and he didn't want his name on that, which I wouldn't want to be tied to that forever either. Nathan Leopold was released from prison after serving 33 years, and Richard Loeb was killed in prison after one of his inmates said that he made sexual advances towards him, and so he murdered him in prison. So he did receive the death penalty. I shouldn't have said that. So yeah, that's how that story ends. Upon Nathan's release, he just went into a very private life. He stayed out of the media and public. I don't know if he's still alive. Maybe he's still alive. I haven't looked that up. Maybe I should look that up. Alright, you guys, that is it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Just let me know down in the comments below what you think and any stories that you want me to cover next. We are back in business, baby. We're getting this train running again, okay? We're doing it. Yes. I love you guys so much. I'll see you in my next one.